is that if you handle legal text in the way the software people handle text, then you can create an open source dynamic that is wiki-like and built on GitHub, be crowdsourced from experts, can be codified. Codification is the way that law gets better. We've been doing it since Hammurabi. And that'll give you much clearer legal definition on things. And this can be fit into, so we're on GitHub. Primavera recoded the application so it's flat files. And that can then be wrapped up into the blockchain. Our job is really just legal text, create a dynamic around in the legal profession of codification, and then how it's used in apps. Apps can be whatever this community is building, and you can give your proof of existence and so forth by either pulling some specifics from the repertory, pull the whole repertory, whatever. So that's I invite folks who are interested in creating, as Primavera says, wrapping transactions in legal text to give them an interface to the legal system.
So, I'm Josh Fairfield, Washington University. And I'd like to talk briefly about the approach we took during our working group. We tried to build something that is not a DAO legal framework yet. That is, the way lawyers work is that they take something that a judge won't raise an eyebrow at, and then they move each micro step forward. So this is something that we think is a shell that provides a path of growth. That could become, it's a legal framework in which you can grow a DAO. You can automate progressively more and more of the functions of the company as you move forward. And we think it has the advantages of being more or less solid. Nobody here is giving legal advice, but this is our best shot at 2 days ago, just sort of noodling through this. So the old joke is on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. And this is a distributed autonomous working group, which we are going to then turn into a very limited, incorporate as a limited liability company. And I think Tim, as our expert on corporate law and on incorporation, can tell us why he started us with this form and some of the limitations of it, and why we think that it's a good fit for at least a limited first attempt, a 0.1 attempt at a DAO framework.
Sure. So the premise is that, so everybody's talking about DAOs and having these distributed organizations, which sound great, but they have no legal protection if something goes wrong. So if we put a DAO out there, it executes, it does something unpredictable, it causes damage, and it gets sued, or the developers get sued, they have no limitations on that liability. So if you look at Delaware corporate law, and corporate law across the world, it provides great frameworks for risk taking. It lets people create entities that are recognized under state law, fund them, take risks, lose all the money, and not lose their home, right? So that's a good thing. This valley was born on that premise. So our notion was to take one of those forms, the Delaware Limited Liability Company, take the most basic Delaware operating agreement and edit it as little as possible so that it remains legally recognizable to the state of Delaware, to a judge, to other lawyers, but to change certain provisions in it and certain functionality in it so that it could become more autonomous. It could start doing things like accounting for votes on the blockchain. It could do things like bringing members in, through tokenization and things like that. So it's a first step that keeps you within the current legal system, gives you the benefits of the current legal system, and allows you to take certain risks that maybe you shouldn't take with a completely autonomous organization. And so it's a framework, it's a first step, and it's we think the way we structured it legally viable.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why we're trying to do this I think everybody knows, and all of you guys, you see a lot of value in these organizations. So these decentralized organizations, at least in my mind, they really represent kind of the next step in our peer-to-peer economy. So we built open source software, which is wonderful, but as anybody who's ever contributed to an open source software project who has done kind of this type of development, there's a lack of structure that really is lacking from it. And I think one of the promises of blockchain technology is that it can actually provide some more bones onto the development in a decentralized way. So we can begin, once we provide this type of legal liability, we can give people the freedom and the opportunity to build really larger and larger decentralized organizations that kind of sit somewhere between the traditional corporate form, which we're very comfortable with, and kind of the informal online groups that we all interact with today. And they can be much more fluid, and they can be tied to things that are not necessarily the types of things that we tie traditional corporate law to. So maybe membership is not solely based on the amount of money that you pay for the share, maybe it's based on your creative output. And you can join a decentralized organization based on your creative output automatically and contribute to kind of a larger project. So I think what's wonderful about this project is really, I think as Josh mentioned, it's really fitting these into our existing legal structures. And I think that there is a way to do it. LLC laws are very flexible, they're very contract-based. So, and a lot like software and writing code, usually with contracts, you can pretty much write a contract anywhere that you want. And it's going to take some massaging, I think, to kind of get it into place.
Yeah, one other thing. This is real. Our goal with our working group was to build an actual LLC that we could both file in Delaware and also put on the blockchain. And we got this close. Delaware is not open until tomorrow morning, so we still have some time. But the goal is to make this real and actually put an LLC on the blockchain. So.
And I should say that there are some features that, this is not one size fits all. This is an exercise in fitting an existing legal form to the needs of a community. Among other things that this doesn't particularly do well. It doesn't minimize tax problems. So if you're going to create a bot and it's going to make some money for humans, the humans pay taxes on it. And that means that you have to file K-1s. We ran into that. There are difficulties with bringing people in and out of the corporation without running into securities law. So it's safest and easiest if this form is used with a set number of people at the outset, and that you're actually running most of what we think of as a DAO at the user level. And to say that, we made a second document that we're still working on. We've called it colloquially, it's a EULA base, we've called it colloquially the Screwla, because it is as aggressively pro-entity as it can be. And that's not our personal inclination, we tend to be pro-human and pro-consumer, but we wanted to make it as sort of tied up for company use, as for corporate use, as humanly possible. We put all kinds of disclaimers, all kinds of limitations and remedies, as much as we could possibly put together, and that's from a document that Aaron helped us find. And we, again, tweaked that user agreement for the kinds of things that a DAO may want to do. And come talk to us off, I like the idea of talking off-chain. So come talk to us off-chain about some of the interesting legal problems. We think we found some stuff that nobody's thought about yet.
And so on Common Accord, we took all of the documents that you would need to file a simple LLC in Delaware and turn them into individual objects on Common Accord, so people can go in there and hack.
Yeah, I feel like I'm cheating a little bit being up here because I missed yesterday and really only participated for about 15 minutes.
You named it. You came up with it.
I have specific but no, it's one thing I wanted to chime in on is that the concept of DAOs has been one which is focused on the revolutionary, but as you discussed about incremental growth, it's also something that very much so in the real world, particularly in the LLC format, can provide efficiencies within the current legal system. And the ability, just as with smart money or programmable money, you can also use the blockchain technology to make voting issues or distribution issues all the more easy. Going through a proxy process, Kathleen and I have been going through a proxy process for a client recently that's publicly traded, and the costs are astronomical. Whereas obviously we're not discussing the idea of putting the blockchain as the guts of a publicly traded company at this point, but the ability to minimize cost and make things more streamlined, efficient from both a time perspective and an actual dollar cost perspective is really, really something that should be explored.
Okay, yeah, so to conclude, the overall idea is like, okay, we have those new technologies and they provide like a lot of new opportunities, optimization, reduction of transaction costs, etc. The problem is that it's actually difficult to deploy them, not technically, but like commercially, because of like the difficulty to frame it in a way that is understandable by the legal system. And so even though it's actually, I still have no idea what a smart contract is and what a DAO is and what like a DAO, whatever it is. The solution, I think, at this preliminary is to actually define it ourselves by creating those legal wraps or like packaging it into a legal a contractual framework that then define according to what we actually want it to be. So that we can finally operate together without waiting for the law to actually understand what we're doing in a way that reduces slightly the legal uncertainty. So this is an ongoing project, but hopefully we will figure it out. Thank you.
This is fantastic, and full disclosure, as lawyers, we do know each other, so I'm not just showing the audience. Did you in your discussions talk about full disclosure as if to the youngest member who would come into an LLC? I mean, how would you use this technology of computational contracting to do a plain vanilla, plain English explanation of the document that you've created, not just as an LLC, but a mortgage, promissory note? How does this technology automate making financial literacy accessible to all?
I mean, I think this agreement would just be in the back end, right? It's kind of, this doesn't need to be surfaced up to a user or some other person that would want to join the LLC. But I think it's
That's the opposite answer that I want.
well,
Yeah.
no, but I think you can use this.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna. I mean, listen. If you're gonna throw a 14-page LLC agreement in front of people, they're not gonna read it. So the solution to kind of surfacing the critical information, it can't be from a legal document. It has to come in a distillation.
So you can automatically assemble term sheets.
Yeah, you could. The key terms can get boiled. You can get boiled out of it and surfaced to the user, and they can assent to that. But I think much like all legal documents, especially in the online world, this is something people are struggling with in terms of service, terms of use, privacy policies. Is how do you boil down the critical elements and surface that to the user so that they can get a sense of what they're agreeing to. I think the point here is not to do that. The point is really just to build really the technical legal documents that are necessary in order to provide the robust protection in terms of limitation of liability in a way that kind of avoids some of the
What we saw in the identity conversation is that what you will use there is applicable here. If you're doing automated assembly of a contract, another feature may be that you can extract the features that everyone would want to know, how do I comply with them?
Yeah, and I think the question was actually addressed to essentially the Common Core platform as opposed to the specific use case of the autonomous organization. And there, that dynamic is essentially social, so it's more or less Wikipedia. The materials are modular and available in the public, and they can be commented, and they can be rated, and they would have their history. You get provenance all the way through. So there's even an example we've done where you go from a bill, the Consumer Privacy Bill of Rights, to a charter, to a privacy policy, to the end user. And in each case, it's a matter of seeing what the diff is and being able to traverse the links. And at the charter level, you could have real conversation go on. So it's social knowledge, which is certainly in the legal world the best kind of knowledge.
And just to conclude on Incremental, it's also about like creating this kind of computable contract in the sense that it becomes much easier by looking at just the parameters. So we have those template system, which translates, you can render them into an actual legal document, but actually what the user wants to read, he doesn't want to read the whole document, he just wants to know which template are we using. And then once the template is something that is community agreed and that is well known, you just have to look at those strings. And then you know how the contract is actually being implemented.
I wanted to ask less on the common accord and more on the operating agreements. So obviously one of the big issues you said you deferred on is buying in or out of the LLC. What was the hardest thing that you did succeed in figuring out? Maybe there was an insight that you didn't have before to fit a DAC into an LLC.
I think the answer would be there is just lingering securities issues just around that. So you know when you tie membership interest with a profit stake or potential for profit or financial, you run into a potential securities issue. So I think that insight was not as clear to me until we started really diving into it.
Right, we totally decided that we were envisioning using this form to have people sort of join later on. We used the idea of a copyright collection society just as a use case. So we wanted to basically donate these documents to, under a Creative Commons license. Anyone who wanted to donate money would be able to donate to a Bitcoin license. And the members would vote as to a Bitcoin address, and the members would be able to vote and automatically have that money directed to the charity of their choice. That was basically what we did. And we wanted to be able, Primavera noted that it would be fun to have more people add more documents about this, to build this community out, and as they did, to join the community and to be able to vote as well. And so we did run into hard securities issues, and I didn't talk about them because you were the one that gave us the insight saying, we just cannot do this, and have people come freely in and out. But the other insight, which I think is obvious to lawyers after the fact, but it took us a while to get to, is that there are real differences between this, which is the organizational document, and your and the representations you're making to your user. And I don't think that everyone who is involved in a DAO and the legal forms involved needs to be entering into the sort of top level creating a legal organization contract. They're probably going to be just fine under an end user license agreement that sets out their rights and responsibilities with respect to everyone else. And there it seems much more plausible that you would not run into the securities issue because you're not giving them part of a company for their contribution to the community. So just a really strong separation between the top level organization of the legal entity and then the actual organization of the community, which is probably better known in EULA. That was something that sort of hit us late in the game, and it was probably a useful insight.
Directly related, does Delaware have a B LLC like California does?
Delaware has a B Corp.
But like a B Corp.
Well, there's three kinds of B Corps in California. One is a B Corp type of LLC. Is there that in Delaware? Or?
Yes. But that wouldn't, you'd still have securities issues under that. It wouldn't, that, just the form doesn't eliminate the securities issues.
But
does it give other advantages?
I think that I think you can, the management aspect of, you want, some sort of collaborative management aspect of a DO, some sort of decentralized entity organization. I think that can be effectuated through a minimum through the LLC structure. And, by the end, I think we're discussing some ways to maybe potentially handle any financial-based aspect of the decentralized organization. And maybe the answer is what kind of Josh was indicating. Maybe the answer is to move that piece more to in terms of use or an end user license agreement and make it more payment and less of a profit use. I think we're still thinking about that.
Thanks.